Before we jump into the big success and several others, you know me, I always love to know the mood of the legislature. And to me, that sort of impacts how things usually end up anyway. But can you talk to us a little bit about the general mood of how things were in Jefferson City?
It varied. There were and of course you walk into the Capitol after they came back, and it was sort of like walking into either a hospital with everybody with masks on or a bandits convention. I'm not sure which. Most of them initially were masked. It sort of trailed off there at the end. And a lot of them, frankly, didn't want to be there. And frankly, not a lot of people wanted to be there.
Yeah.
But we did. Lobbyists would come in and out. It was not a hang around in the building and talk to everybody because, well, we'd had one member of the House, Joe Runyons, who had been diagnosed and spent several days in hospital right after they left the first time, and then one of a lobbyist friend of mine, Boo Foley, had it, and I'm not sure he's completely over it yet. It's COVID-19 is not something to laugh about.
No,
But
no.
that being said, the General Assembly did what they were supposed to do. They came to the building, they discussed the issues, they worked through the problems, and they ended up with a remarkably successful session. Now, the House only passed 15 bills, the Senate 16. Now, the House passed more. The House passed 34, but the House originates the appropriations bills. Actually, I think 40% of the bills passed by the General Assembly were passed by Cody Smith, who's a realtor. He's also chairman of appropriations, and he files all those bills. But they worked very hard, and I think they did a very successful job. I saw the governor, I think Wednesday of the last week. I was in the building downstairs in the basement, and he came walking down there's a driveway in the middle, and he came walking down. He was in shirt sleeves, his sleeves rolled up. I think he was headed back to the mansion for something. And we talked for a minute. He asked me if he'd ordered this, and I told him he hadn't, but what did he think of it? He seemed to think it was okay. He and his staff have been doing just a fantastic job of trying to do what they believe, what the governor believes is best for the people of the state of Missouri. And I think he's succeeded. A lot of people were upset that he didn't close everything down. A lot of people were upset that he closed everything down. It's a job in a crisis. There is no winning for a governor, but I think he did a superb job, as did the General Assembly.
Well, Sam, mentioning the governor early on, he signed an executive order that allowed for online remote notary, which is something our members are very familiar with because we've lobbied for that now for 2 years. So you've got some really exciting news on taking that from being a temporary thing in the governor's ordinance, executive order, to legislative activity.
Yeah, and frankly, that was one of the things that I think COVID-19 sort of helped. If there is a bright spot in all this, because there were differences of opinion, and there continue to be at times. But what happened was people realized, my God, we've got to have this. And it goes well beyond real estate. I mean, family law attorneys, everybody. They've got to have the ability to do a notary. Otherwise, the world just stops. You don't need a notary many times, but when you need them, you need them. We were able, in the Senate, there was a bill by Hannah Kelly, 1655. It dealt with some issues for the Secretary of State. The Senate amended onto that Senator Sandy Crawford's Notary Bill, the Senate committee substitute that was agreed on by everyone by that point. I mean, the underwriters, the title companies, the realtors, of course, bankers, everybody said, yeah, this will work. Passed it through the Senate with the amendment on it, sent it over to the House. They needed one vote to take it up and pass it. And they kept like putting it aside, which began to worry me somewhat. As you know, I get very paranoid at the end of session. Yeah. And Hannah kept sending me text messages. And finally I got one, they're going to take it up after lunch. This was on the, I guess, last day of the session, which doesn't leave much time. So they went to Hannah. I was actually, for the first time, I think in the session, I was in the gallery because I wanted to watch. They went to her. She did a great job of explaining the issue. There were a couple of people that stood up and said, yeah, we need to do this. We need to do it now. I think David Gregory got involved, and that was a good thing. And voted, and it was done. So that was one for the books. I'll tell you what, everybody.
Well, I was going to say it certainly made our president happy. Jeff Tester had made that a priority of his year as president.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I texted both you and Jeff right after it happened, and he was very pleased, and that's good, and it was important.
And for everyone watching, the governor will still need to sign that, but it's my understanding it will become effective in late August after the governor's signature.
August 28th. There was some discussion about having an effective date in 1st of January, because the Office of the Secretary of State has to still do rulemaking. They have promised that everyone with an interest in the issue will be consulted on that rulemaking. That makes it more difficult. I will tell you something. Jay Ashcroft, Secretary Ashcroft, I think did a superb job of sort of keeping the pressure on, being willing to listen and react to people's reasonable concerns. I mean, some people were just, well, we can't do this, and yeah, actually we can. But he worked hard through the whole thing, as did his staff. So he's to be commended as well.
Well, good. That's a very exciting win for us after working on it for so long. So I understand something happened on service animals this session. What's that?
We've been dealing with that issue for, I think, 3 sessions. Senator Denny Hoskins had Senate Bill 644. Representative Summers had a service animal bill as well. 644 is the bill that passed, although everybody was working on it. It makes some changes to sort of clarify what a service animal is. It makes it a criminal penalty if you misidentify an animal as a service animal. I mean, right now under federal law, I think the only critters that can be service animals are dogs and, strangely enough, horses. Although I think they're the miniature horses and not the great big ones. I'm not sure you'd want to take a Clydesdale on a plane. But landlords, property managers have had some real problems with people making all sorts of claims that, this is a service animal. Then they leave the animal in the apartment while they're gone, which leads everyone to believe that it's a pet and not a service animal. I'm not anti-pets. We've got 3 cats. But sometimes you've got to use some reason. I think this will help. I think it'll make people stop and think when they start misidentifying and say, do I really want to take a chance on having a criminal record because of my puppy dog? Maybe,
Well,
maybe not.
well, good. And I know that we'll be giving our members much more detail on all of these as things become available. But so I thought I'd skip ahead to the Fresh Start Act, which a lot of people watching this may not even know what it is, but I know that there are some issues related to license reciprocity.
You got two issues here. You got reciprocity, and the governor was very interested in making it much simpler for military families to get reciprocity. Representative Derek Grier expanded that a little bit. The language in the bill is not bad. We worked with the Real Estate Commission on that in terms of our side of it. So that was pretty much a done deal. The bigger issue was the Fresh Start Act, the theory of which was fine. That was to make sure that simply because somebody had committed a criminal act, they would not be forever stopped from becoming licensed. Now, on the other hand, there are some criminal acts that if you commit, you certainly should not be in the real estate business. In 2005, at the request of the Real Estate Commission, Missouri Realtors was successful in passing legislation that set out a series of crimes that forever stopped you from becoming a licensee. Those are generally what I would refer to as heinous crimes. Murder, first degree murder. You can do second degree murder and still get licensed. Assault, the various iterations of rape, crimes against children, child pornography, that sort of thing. And those you just flat can't get licensed, nor should you get licensed. And as I explained it to the Senate, once you get a license and are affiliated with a company that is involved with a multi-listing service, and almost all of them are anymore. You get the keys to the kingdom, as I refer to it. You can open any of the doors of the listed houses that are in the MLS that have a lockbox on them. So people who have been convicted of those crimes, and these are crimes with generally a fairly high recidivism rate, they can't get licensed, nor should they. That being said, I got into I'll call it a discussion with a member of the House when we did the House bill, and we testified against the House bill because it said, one, you're going to eventually give everybody a license. He said, don't you believe in a second chance? And I said, well, in some cases, no, I don't. And he got very irritated with me. He said we would have to talk later, and that was, we still haven't talked. That being said, we worked with Senator Andrew Koenig. He had the bill in the Senate, and he finally understood. I mean, it takes a while for people to understand what we're talking about because the premise is, yeah, everybody deserves a second chance. Well, no, everybody does not deserve a second chance when the risks are as high as they are. So Senator Koenig agreed to the changes. We took the Real Estate Commission and licensing out of the bill effectively. We did do two things in the license law. There is a line in the license law, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the sections anymore, that said that a licensee must be of good moral character. Well, I'm not sure what that means anymore, and nobody else is for that matter. So it was taken out, and then that they could not commit a crime of moral. There it goes again, moral turpitude, and that was taken out. So what we have is we are out of the bill. The bill was amended to remove those two sections, and we're going to move on. And I think that's an excellent result.
Good.
Certainly better than we've been dealing with that for 3 years now.
Okay. What happened this session on property tax assessments and appeals?
Well, as everybody's probably aware, there were some big problems in both St. Louis and the Kansas City area with assessments. In some cases, assessments went up 30, 40%. I think in most of those cases, those were jurisdictions that had sales price disclosure. And there was an interesting case in a county north of Kansas City, and I'm not sure which one it was, that the assessments were sent out and they arrived either the day that the last day for filing an appeal or after you could file an appeal. And some of them were fairly outrageous. The assessor at one point said he wasn't going to accept any, and then the newspapers got a hold of him, and he decided that the discretion was the better part of valor, and he was going to accept the appeals. What they have done with this, and Senator Tony Luetkemeyer, who is from the St. Joe, I think Platte County, he worked very hard on this to make sure it was a reasonable approach. He ensures that everyone will get the opportunity to appeal their assessment if they believe it is necessary. He also puts the burden of proof back on the assessor in most instances. And very importantly, there were some people in the House that decided that what we needed was statewide sales price disclosure. Missouri Realtors, of course, has been opposed to statewide sales price disclosure for as long as I've been involved with Missouri Realtors. Senator Luetkemeyer told me that he wasn't going to take that. He would not accept an amendment for that, and he kept to it. He did a superb job.
Wow, that's great. I know that you mentioned working with the Columbia Board of Realtors on something relating to rental housing. What was that?
Well, there have, for the last probably 14 years, 15 years, the various members of the Boone County Commission have been concerned with with achieving some sort of ability to regulate rental housing in the county. The city of Columbia has a very aggressive rent system. The county does not. And again, this year, the county came back with, we want to regulate it. Well, what we got them to agree to was a piece of legislation that basically said, and I've got it right here, Chuck Basie introduced it, and then the original bill, Chuck agreed to some amendments on it. Essentially what it says is the Boone County Commission, and this is only Boone County, by the way, can appoint someone to receive complaints from the public about their rental property. They will introduce a standard for rental property. And let me read that to you. There shall be structural protection from the elements, access to water service, including hot water, sewer service, access to electrical service, heat to the resident, and basic security, which at minimum shall include locking doors and windows. And that's it. That's fairly minimal, but then they can receive a complaint, but the tenant must be a tenant on the lease and they must be current in their rent. One of the problems that we have in jurisdictions that have these very strong rental ordinances is people use them to punish the landlord, the property manager, the property owner. We hope that this will keep that from occurring. It prohibits the county from doing regular inspections, which generally end up, or licensing landlords. Those two things end up being a cash cow for the
Hmm.
county, or the city. And so we believe that this is the first time we've ever agreed to a bill. We've stopped it, well, every year. Um, and I think it will prove to be a good model for the rest of the state.
Well, good. Well, it's always a great success when we can work so closely with a local association on something at the state level that impacts them that way. And I know it was especially important to them that the rent be current. That was a big deal. So it's exciting that you were able to get that done. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really insightful today. I know our members appreciate hearing the latest and greatest of what happened in the legislative session. Again, I know it was an interesting one. They were not there for a lot of the time that they would have normally been there, but sounds like we were very successful as realtors, both realtors who are in the legislature helping us get things through, which is a great story in itself, but also just the quality of the legislation that passed and how that fits into our legislative agenda for the year. So,
Well, John, I will tell you, and one of the things that I believe helped was that in February and a little bit in March, although they left about what, the 16th or something like that, we had realtors in the building, and they were reminding the members of the General Assembly that these were our issues. And although they didn't get around to everybody, people talk. And it's like, did you have any realtors in? I had realtors in. They were all excited about notary. What do you think about that? Well, that's probably a good idea.
that is such a
That's the
good
kind of
point.
thing.
Right. Even though we couldn't have Capitol Conference because we were in a virtual lockdown at the time and we went virtual with our April business conference, having those realtor days in February and March leading up to what would have been Capitol Conference was really a great safety net for us this year.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Sam, and thanks to all the
Thank
realtors
you.
who joined us today for this first edition of Real Talk Missouri. We're really excited to be with you, and we look forward to the next edition. Thank you so much.
Super. Thank you. Let's do this again.